Welcome to today's session. In today's session, we will be talking about the foundation and history of AI. And in this session, we will provide a brief history of the disciplines which contributed ideas, viewpoints, and various techniques to AI. Okay, like any history, one is forced to concentrate on small number of people, events, and ideas, and to ignore others that were also important. In this, we will be organizing the history around a series of questions and how these questions are actually impacting the foundation of AI. Right? So let us get started. So, the first discipline or the first field which came into existence in connection to AI is philosophy. It was somewhere around 428 BC and it is still contributing a lot in the field of AI. So, certain questions like can formal rules be used to draw valid conclusions, or how does the mental mind arise from the physical brain? Where does knowledge comes from, and how does this knowledge leads to action? So these questions are basically constituting the various problems or various confusions which arises in terms of human mind, and the same questions and the solutions to this are being replicated in the field of AI. As already mentioned, that AI is nothing but making a system to think like a human and think rationally like a human and work rationally or act rationally like a human being does. So hence it is very important that it should know how the human mind work and how things work. So now, how does this mental mind arise from the physical brain? So now we have a brain which is a physical component of our body. Now when we are considering this physical component, essentially we will make use of this physical component in order to derive various solutions to our problems, right? So how do we connect this mental mind with the physical brain which is there? All right. And the third one is where does knowledge comes from? Now we know that we know about certain things about the universe, like the sun rises from the east, or let's say the the sky is blue in color. So all those things, they are established facts and laws of nature. Okay, so these basically are the facts or the premises through which we can derive the knowledge. Okay, so is it possible that we can incorporate this into a system as well, so that it behaves or it imitates the human thought process? Okay, now there is a theory which is known as confirmation theory, which was founded by Carnap and Carl Hempel, who attempted to understand how this knowledge can be acquired from experience. So knowledge essentially do not just comes from various facts, but it also comes from introspection as well as different experiences. Okay, different experiences, we do something, we got an experience, so these experiences will also add to the already existing knowledge. So this is known as the confirmation theory. Confirmation theory. Previous to this, there were a lot of theories which were proposed, like dualism, materialism, empiricism. Then there was also induction. So all this later on converted into this confirmation theory, where all the hypotheses could be confirmed using various experiments. And the final point, that is, how does this knowledge lead to action? Okay, now essentially having mere knowledge is not sufficient. In order to incorporate this into an AI based machine, okay, we need to convert the knowledge which we have or which the system have into its relevant action. Hence it will be introducing the behavioral aspect of the definition of AI. Okay, so this is all about philosophy. And the next field which is contributing to the field of AI is mathematics, and it has been contributing since 800 to present. Okay, 800 BC to present. Now, if you are considering the rationalist approach of the uh, block that we discussed in our previous video, we observed that rationalist approach essentially has various mathematical and computational models as well as engineering methodologies. Okay, now essentially these models has to be formed or has to be developed using certain formal rules so that we can derive the correct conclusions. Okay, there are also questions which are which has the capacity or where we can apply computation, and there are certain questions or certain problems where we cannot apply computation. Okay, so that those things the systems could identify. Okay, that has to be identified and those system could be identified. These formal rules were also considered by formal logic concept by several mathematicians, and philosophers staked out most of the important ideas of AI, but the leap to a formal science required a level of mathematical formalization in three fundamental areas. Okay, first one is logic, the second one is computation, okay, and the third one is basically your probability. Okay, sorry, here it is, probability. So these were the three areas in which mathematicians worked mostly. Okay, so if we are considering mathematics to be contributing to AI, essentially there has to be three components: formal logic, computation, and probability. So if we can apply any of these properties or any of these problem solving fundamental areas to the existing problem solving or to the existing problem. Okay, so besides logic and computation, if we are considering probability, it was by Italian Gerolamo Cardano who first framed the idea of probability. Let me write it here for you. He was Gerolamo Cardano, and in the year 1501 to 1576 he was there. So he first framed the idea of probability, and it described it in terms of possible outcomes of basically gambling events. Okay, probability quickly became an invaluable part of all quantitative sciences, which helped to deal with uncertain measures and incomplete theories. If we are having various in the laws of thought approach, we saw that if the premises are not sufficient, or we do not have 100% certainty about any of the premise, then the resultant deduction might not be complete, right? So here mathematics has a huge contribution, where in terms of probability based problem solving strategy, it could actually find out an approximate correct solution, okay, based on insufficient or not complete information. All right, and there were other, later on certain advanced theories were also introduced, and certain other statistical methods were also introduced. Okay, which definitely contributes to AI in a lot many fields. So mathematics formed one of the backbones of, one of the key components of AI, right from starting with logic, finally leading to computation, and then using probability. Until now, it is contributing immensely to the field of AI. Okay. The third field that we will be discussing is economics, and it started its contribution from 1776 up till now. So here the various questions were answered, like how should we make decisions so as to maximize the payoff, or how should we do this when others may not go along, or how should we do this when payoff may be far in the future. Okay, it got its start from 1776 as already mentioned, and Scottish philosopher Adam Smith was the one who was one of the pioneer in this field. Okay, and he published an inquiry into the nature and causes of wealth of nations. So this is a book that was published. And utility, okay, was introduced in this particular domain. So utility basically refers to the preferred outcomes, and it was formalized in order to be used as a key component of any invention or any discovery. Okay, now there were also other theories here, like decision theories, which were basically a combination of probability theory with the utility theory, so that if there are not complete and not complete information about anything, still it can go ahead. Okay, and it can find out what could be the most suitable outcome, or what could be the more preferred outcome. All right, which will provide a formal and complete framework for decisions that will be made under certainty. All right, this is suitable for large economics where each agent would need to pay no attention to actions of other agents as individuals. All right, so a lot of things came in this particular field as well. Okay, it was pursued in the field of operation research during the World War II, and there were various other situations, like in a game playing situation. There also, suppose I am playing a game like this. Okay, this is a tic-tac-toe game. Suppose I am playing a game, and what should be the next step so that it could what should be the next possible step so that it could help me win the game. So this game playing was also one of the key domains of economics, not economics, of contribution of AI using economics, where we consider the utility to the maximum. Okay, utility, basically it is utility oriented. That means what should be the preferred outcome of anything, of any action, right? So economics played a major role. Now after that, the next topic, the next field which contributed immensely is neuroscience, which started off in 1861, and it is the study of nervous system, particularly the brain. As already mentioned in my previous discussion also, that it is essential that we establish certain connection between the physical brain and the mental mind. Now talking about neuroscience, if we have to do that, we have to understand the brain first. So it is a study of the nervous system, and particularly involving the brain, and the exact way in which brain enables thought is one of the greatest mysteries of science, which needs to be evolved. So how do the brains basically process the information? Okay, so this neuroscience field, in this particular neuroscience field, scientists worked with brain damaged patients, and they persuaded the medical establishment of any existence of the localized areas of brain responsible for specific cognitive functions. And there they identified that the brain consisted of various nerve cells or neuron. This image is basically this image is basically the image of a neuron and or a nerve cell. Okay, so and it represents the different parts which is present in a neuron. Now each neuron, it consists of a cell body. So this is the cell body, this is primarily the cell body. okay, or soma, and it contains cell nucleus. And branching out of the cell body are a number of dendrites. So though it looks like a tree, it is actually not a tree, it is basically the dendrites, and a single long fiber is known as the axon. So this part, it will be known as the axon, and it is longer than the other dendrites. Okay, the axon stretches out for a long distance, much longer than this scale in this particular diagram indicates. Okay, so it might have the exact measurement, however, is not known, but it is longer than the other dendrites, and typically basically they are 1 centimeters long, that is 100 times the diameter of the cell body. If you are considering this is 1 centimeter, this is a typical scenario, however it could be more than this or less than this. Okay, and it can reach up to 1 meter. Okay, so this is how you how an approximate idea of how long an axon could be. And a neuron at the same time, it can make connections with around 1 lakh other neurons at the same time at the various junctions, which are known as synapses. Okay, so here different junctions are there, these are the different junctions, and these are known as the synapses. So other neurons come and join their synapse here. Okay, so here other neurons can come and join. So I'll just draw this for you so that it becomes easier. Okay, so other neurons and come and join here. Now this, at the same time, since there are a lot of open synapse, so a lot of other neurons can go and join. Okay, signals are propagated from these neurons by complicated electrochemical reactions. So these neurons will be having different types of electrochemical reactions through which the signals could be transmitted, and the signals control the brain activity in short term and also enable long term changes in positions and connectivity of these neurons. Okay, these mechanisms are thought to form the basis for learning in the brain, and most information processing goes on to the cerebral cortex, the outer layer of the brain, which is known as the cerebral cortex. And the basic organizational unit appears to be a column of tissue about 0.5 mm in diameter, extending the full depth of the cortex, which is about 4 mm in humans. And this column is containing about 20,000 neurons. So this is like each tissue will be having this 20,000 neurons, which will be able to store and process the information, right? So this is how your brain, the nerve cells or the neurons basically work. Okay, so they will be passing the information through various electrochemical reactions. Okay, and this myelin sheet is basically a covering, okay, of this particular axon. And through these electrochemical reactions, and all of these will be arranged in these kind of tissues. I'm just creating a database basically. So these kind of tissues, and within which around 20,000 neurons could be working at the same time. All right, it is more than one column is working at the same time, so that definitely more than 20,000 neurons would be working at the same time. And it will be processing and reprocessing the information, and it can also store it temporarily, or it can store them permanently. Okay, so the basic funda of, or the basic logic behind your brain is basically the nerve cell or the neuron. They are the primary soldiers in processing all this information. Okay, so the next important field which contributes to AI is psychology, and it has been contributing since 1879, and this has contributions from the field of thought process. That means how humans and animals think and act, as well as there is another terminology which is associated, which is known as cognitive psychology. So first one, I think we already know that how humans and animals think and act. Okay, so thought process is basically triggered by introspection as well as psychological experiments and experimental experiences or stimulus to the brain, right? So all those are together working in order to make the humans think, humans and animals think. Now, what is this cognitive psychology? So the view of the brain as an information processing device, which is a principal characteristic of cognitive psychology, can be a potential contributor of AI. Okay, so this psychology primarily it will deal with the view of the human brain. Okay, so this is something which has to do about the human brain. Okay, so it does not deal with any other factors apart from three different steps, okay, of a particular agent. First of all, the stimulus must be translated into an internal representation. This representation is manipulated by cognitive process to derive new internal representations, and these in turn are retranslated back into action. Okay, so these are the three primary things we have to remember from cognitive psychology. Is that first of all is the stimulus. I'll write it down for you. Stimulus. The second one, the stimulus, which has to be translated into an internal representation. Okay, and so this stimulus has to be translated into a internal representation, and this internal representation has to be again they has to be again manipulated by cognitive process. Okay, so cognitive process has to be there, and finally this cognitive process has to be retranslated back into action. So these are the three steps which are involved in your cognitive psychology. Your brain will receive the stimulus, it will be giving you a internal representation, and then different types of cognitive processes would be acting on it. As already mentioned, we have cognitive science, which deals with various computational models and various AI based models, and finally it will lead to action. So all these together contributes to the field of psychology, which in other hand provides support to the field of AI. After that is the computer engineering domain. Now this I do not think we need to explain much. Okay, so we have to understand that this computer engineering or the field of computer science completely deals with the development and modification of the existing systems into a efficient computer. Okay, for artificial intelligence to succeed, we basically need two things: intelligence and an artifact. Okay, the computer has been an artifact of choice. This computer is basically a artifact of choice. We have ourselves created and ourselves developed it. Okay, the modern digital electronic computer was invented independently and almost simultaneously by scientists in three different countries during the World War II. Okay, so after that several other programmable computers came out. Okay, in ENIAC is there, ENIAC is there, then we have digital computers, we have analytical, Charles Babbage developed the analytical engine. So there were various programmable versions of computers, and finally at present we can see a lot more advancement in the field of computer engineering. And not only that, we can actually use this concept of computer engineering in AI in order to develop further more advanced computer science technology. Okay, and right now if you consider the present scenario, we have interactive interpreters, we have personal computers, we have different types of rapid development environments, we have different automatic storage management, and we have different types of object oriented programming concept. A lot of things are working together so that we can go ahead with inventing newer things every possible day. Okay, the final field that we will be discussing is control theory and cybernetics as well as linguistics. Okay, linguistics will come later. First of all, let us talk about control theory and cybernetics. So this is contributing from 1948 till present, and now in control theory and cybernetics we will be primarily talking about the artifacts which we considered during the computer engineering domain. Okay, so these artifacts has to operate under their own control. All right, so this is the control theory. So how you will be developing a self-controlling machine, or how basically we will be able to develop a machine which can be learning on its own, or which has a definite objective, all right, that could be maximized every time or maximized over time. So all these things basically contributes to the field of control theory and cybernetics, and essentially there is a lot of mathematics involved here. So core mathematics as well as applied mathematics. So all these fields are like, let's say, different concepts of algebra, like matrix algebra, then there is calculus, then there is various probability systems, and there is various fuzzy logic systems. So all those systems which comes under core mathematics and applied mathematics are used in control theory and cybernetics, so that we can develop a self-controlling machine. Okay, and on in this process a lot of computational models are developed, so that it is leading into a maximized output, or it is leading into a maximized objective function. We will discuss all about this in deeply in our subsequent sessions. So as of now, just we have to remember that we need to automate the thing. Simply developing or simply creating a computer or simply creating a program will not help. It should be able to operate on its own. Okay, it should be able to take decisions on its own, and for that control theory and cybernetics is one of the most potential field, right? Now talking about the last part, which is linguistics, it has been contributing since 1957 up till present, and here we are actually talking about how does language relate to thought. I believe all of us have heard about this terminology, which is known as natural language processing. So what does this natural language processing means? NLP. Okay, most of us will be also doing projects in our higher semesters when we go for using NLP. Now basically what happens is we have a concept which is known as verbal behavior here. Okay, verbal behavior. So this verbal behavior is a behaviorist approach to the language learning. Okay, and what does this behaviorist approach say? That how does our language, the language we speak, can relate to our thought? Okay, because whenever we think, it is not that we think in some other language and we speak in some other language. Generally whatever is our mother tongue, we try to think it using that particular language, right? So now if we are using that language in order to think, that means definitely there has to be some connection between the language and the thought. That entire phenomenon give rise to the concept of natural language processing, where we will be communicating with the computer with a language which is known to both of us, and in this process we will be able to support the computer in order to understand the language better and in order to take decisions in a better way. Okay, modern linguistics or computational linguistics, this was born at about let's say in the year 1900s, I mean 57 and later. Okay, so and it is an intersecting field of computational linguistics and natural language processing. So if we are considering both of this, then it is ultimately leading you to modern AI. Okay, and the problem of understanding language soon turned out to be considerably more complex than it seemed in 1957. So when you are talking about this converting our own language into our thought process, so that is basically, that was little simpler, but however after 1907 it became much more complicated, and understanding language requires an understanding of the subject matter and the context, and not just understanding the structure of the sentences. It might be possible that whatever the problem definition is there, it might be in some other format, and simply knowing or simply making the computer understand its own language or understand a particular language might not be sufficient. Okay, it was not widely accepted till 1960s that NLP could be incorporated into computers. Okay, and in knowledge representation also there was a lot of obstacles which was there, and we will talk about it later, which was there in order to represent any knowledge. If we are using natural language, then also it might not be sufficient. Okay, so all these were obstacles basically which were there in the field of linguistics. However, still till now people are working with NLP, and NLP has been one of the booming domains of AI, where a lot of research is basically going on in improvising every day. We have various text analysis, we have various word nets which are formed, we have different parsers which are formed. So all these things are basically based on linguistics. We know the structure of a language, and based on that particular structure of the language we are actually able to derive what is the what do you call that, what is the which is the verb, which is the noun, or which is the preposition, or which is an article. So all those things, people are successful in deriving all those things. However, a lot many inventions, a lot many discoveries are yet to be there in this particular field. So linguistics, though it feels that it is coming from arts, but actually it is not an arts based subject. It has a lot of contribution towards the field of AI. So I believe we have had a good glimpse of the different fields which have been contributing to AI since the early times. Okay, it started off with philosophy, it and slowly moved ahead with your what do you call that, the next subject was we had philosophy, then we had economics, we had mathematics, we had neuroscience, then we had psychology, we also had control theory and cybernetics, we had computer science, okay, computer engineering, we also have finally linguistics, and there are a lot other fields also which are actually contributing to AI. In fact, as of now, in the present scenario, if we consider, almost all the subjects and all the disciplines could be converged together in the field of AI. Okay, so for today's session we will be stopping here. In my next video we will be discussing about a little bit about the history of AI. Okay, thank you.